Hi everyone, it's Lindsay and I want to share how to create a graphic background today. So I am starting out with an A2 white top folding card base. The first thing I'm going to do is put a piece of masking tape or painter's tape right above my score line on my card base, just to protect the back of my card. Now I need to go ahead and prep my card and get all of my lines made that are going to guide me as I do all of my stamping. I want this to be very graphic, almost perfect looking, so I'm going to need these pencil lines. So I'm using my T-square ruler and a pencil and a very light touch to go in and draw almost like a grid for myself. Now I have a cutting mat behind me that has measuring lines on it, so I'm going to use that to my advantage. So I'll go ahead and line up that first line that I drew, and I've lined that up with my 1/2 inch mark, and then every 1/2 inch I'm going to go down and draw a line. So every little blue line on my cutting grid or cutting mat behind me is a 1/2 inch. So that's what I'm using to measure this by. It just saves me a lot of time to do it this way, and I don't have to pull out another ruler or eyeball it. I know it's going to be perfect. So I'm just moving this down. I'm using a very light touch, and I'm bumping the end of my T-square ruler right up against my card base. That is going to allow me to get really straight lines. So I just have a few more to finish up here, and then I'm going to start going and drawing in my vertical lines here. Please excuse the focus. I have a lot of white on my background right now, so it's having a hard time focusing on that. So I'm going to go ahead and move my card now to where it is lined up in the corner of one of those little squares. Now I'm measuring my little stamp that I'll be using to stamp this background, so I know that I need to leave about 3/4 of an inch, an 1.5 inches. So I'll go ahead and I will measure out 3 little cubes on my grid mat there, and then I'll go ahead and draw 2 lines, so I'll end up with 3 rows of stamping. And again, I just bumped the end of that T-square ruler right up against the bottom of that card base, so my lines were nice and straight. Now I'm using the mustache stamp, and this is from the Candy Hearts stamp set from Joy Claire Stamps. I'll be stamping this mustache in a dark red ink and a light pink ink. These are both the Memento little dewdrop inks, they're dye inks. And I'm going to start out with my dark red ink. Now because I have made myself that grid, I can use all one ink color and completely fill up my card base with that, and that just saves me a little bit of time, so I don't have to clean off my stamp every time. I can just go right back in with that same color ink and continue to ink up and stamp with it. Then once that's done, I can move on to my pink ink. So I'm just going to go ahead and line up the stamp inside each of those rectangles that I created with my grid. So I started off at the top because that stamp will be hanging off the edge, and that is why I did mask off the back of my card base there. Now I will be creating sort of a checkerboard pattern with my colors and my mustaches here, so I'm going to go every other on my little red mustaches here. So I started off in the middle on that first row, then my second row down from that, I'm going to go on both sides of that red mustache. Now if you are using a smaller stamp to create this background, you would just continue to do the same thing, but you might have a few more stamps on each row instead of just 3 like I'm doing here. So I sped this up a little bit, and I'm going to continue to stamp out this entire card base with these little mustaches. I am eyeballing this at this point, and it's very easy to see through these clear stamps to get them exactly perfect. Now I am also, you'll see my head shadow in there, and that is because I am looking straight over this as I stamp, and that allows me to get really perfect placement with these. So once I had all of my red mustaches, I moved on to my pink. Now this is a very light pink, so it's a nice contrast to that very dark, rich red color that I stamped. Now one thing I will say about these stamps, or these inks, whenever I stamp with them, it always looks a little splotchy at first. However, once these dry, they smooth out. So whenever I first got these ink pads and I started stamping with them, I thought I had made a really bad investment with these, So I let it dry. I came back and looked at it, and my mind was at ease because it had completely smoothed out and it was a whole lot better. So if you get these and you start stamping with them and you're like, oh no, what did I do? Just let it dry. I promise it will look better once it's dry. So I finished off stamping in all of those pink little mustaches until all of my little rectangles from my grid were filled in. Then I came in with this really good eraser, and I'm going to erase all of my pencil lines, remove that masking tape from the back of my panel, and I've got this really great graphic background on my card base ready to just add my sentiment. I didn't want to cover up very much of this background that I had made, so I cut out this small circle that just fit the 2 connected solid hearts in the Candy Hearts stamp set. And I also used that same circle die and one just a slightly smaller to cut out a glitter frame from some glitter cardstock that I had on hand that matches this pink ink. So I'm using my Misty. I went ahead and lined up this heart stamp right in the center of that circle die cut, and then I just double stamped it down with that very light pink ink that I used on the background. Now I'm placing on 2 little sentiments that say love you and XOXO, and I just placed those on both of the little hearts that I had stamped, and I'm stamping those in the dark red ink. Now once that was done, I went ahead and put on that glitter frame with some glossy accents, and I let that dry off to the side for a moment, and now I'm going to add some fun foam and double-sided adhesive to the back of that circle die cut and pop that right in the top center of this card base. I also added a few little sequins around that circle die cut, and I secured those with glossy accents, and then I came in with my Wink of Stella and I put just a nice layer over both of those hearts. And that finished off the card. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I hope I gave you some tips on creating these nice graphic backgrounds. As always, I will leave you with a few pictures of the finished card. For more information on the supply list, you can head to my blog. I will leave that link in the description box below. Thank you guys for watching today, and happy crafting.